Today, I'm joined by Dan Titus, filling in for Zach, who's busy with one or many of his kids. I'm not too sure. We're going to be touching on just some news, injury news, player news, guys that have come back. Should be a fun one. This is Fantasy Basketball International. This is Balls Deep. Got all my interest, mirrors they don't, all of the things that we do. Welcome to the Balls Deep Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Basketball International. I'm Adam King, your host at AdamKing91 on Twitter. Joining me usually is Zach, but today let's bring in Dan Titus. Very short notice. Dan, thanks for squeezing me in. I just didn't want to have to make people listen to just me for 45 minutes. So always good to have you on the show. How have you been?
Pretty good, man. I can totally agree with you with the going solo thing. Like, I don't know how Lloyd does it every day.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's always nice to bounce ideas off of someone else. So man, it's exciting. It's in season tournament day. So excited to see some loud courts, and just saw actually that the Atlanta Hawks and Indiana Pacers have the highest total in quite some time.
Okay.
At least
not
over
surprising.
Yeah, it's like 252.5. So
wow.
Hopefully there'll be a lot of fantasy points scored in tonight's game. So that's one I'll definitely be watching.
Yeah, we'll see. The Pacers were pretty bad. They were blown out by the Magic in their last game. So it's very hit or miss with the Pacers, but I think they still scored over 100 points, even in a blowout loss. So, so look, I thought I sent you through a few names that we'd talk about. We've had some injury news come in the last hour. So we'll start with the injury news. If I scroll back down on my screen here, let's start with CJ McCollum. So he's out with obviously a pretty rare injury, although it is something he's had before. It does sound like he's getting closer to returning. If reading the direct quote, he was a full participant at practice, but just needs to get clearance from the pulmonologist. So whether that comes in the next week or so, we're not sure, but he seems to think that he should be getting cleared pretty soon. Obviously, he's rostered, so it doesn't really make a difference for anyone with him other than he'll be active. Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins, what do you think happens when McCollum is back? Are either of those guys going to be able to put up 12-team value moving forward?
No, I would hold Daniels for now, but I think Jordan Hawkins has probably been trending towards a drop right now anyway. Primarily, he was just threes and scoring, and now that that's dropped off, Jose Alvarado's back. Herb Jones has been playing better, and now Zion seems to have gotten out of his funk that he was in over the last couple of weeks. So I think that kind of renders Jordan Hawkins expendable, whereas Dyson Daniels at least still holds value because of what he's doing for rebounds, assists, steals in particular. I wrote about him earlier this week. He's right now tied for second in the NBA in deflections per game. So those steals are probably something that can hold. Now, that's all being said, if CJ McCollum returns, I think Dyson Daniels becomes, someone that you're, streaming right now to probably someone you're going to end up dropping. But I mean, it sounds promising on CJ McCollum. He did say that he needs to get cleared by his pulmonologist, but the fact that he's practicing, I would feel pretty good about that if I have him stashed on IL. Like, maybe he can come back, within the next few weeks here. So continue to stream Daniels while you can, but I think it's definitely becoming more of a short-term ad than long-term, being that CJ seems to be progressing the right way.
It is, yeah. I mean, I like what Daniels has done. I know they're really high on him in New Orleans. And yeah, so I wouldn't be dropping him as soon as CJ comes back. And as we know, I mean, Brandon Ingram, Zion, they're no strangers to injury themselves. And I think Daniels is almost playing this role now where a little bit like Bruce Brown did in Denver last year, where if anyone gets injured, Daniels steps up. I think he has that ability to play additional minutes. It's not a direct one-for-one sort of if Zion goes down, we're not looking at I don't know, Zeke Naji or Najee Marshall.
Najee Marshall,
Najee Marshall. Always get those guys mixed up. So there is still hope for him, I think. But when healthy, he's probably going to be tough to roster. Ben Simmons has not returned to court work yet. So we still don't have a lot of clarity. It does sound like we're going to get a better update tomorrow on Wednesday from the Nets. If you're rostering him, I mean, are you holding him? Like, with very little information, it's hard to make a guess. But given he's had this kind of an injury before, and we've seen it keep him out for multiple weeks, well, weeks upon weeks upon weeks, are you worried that this is a repeat of that and that he could miss months?
The fact that the reports are coming back positive, I'm a little bit more optimistic, but if we're talking the long-term outlook here, I think it's certainly a problem because it seems like to be a nerve issue that can flare up at any time. And so anytime you have a nerve issue, like I'm a little bit scared about that prognosis because, you know, it could be a workload thing. It could be, you know, someone getting contact with him that kind of, you know, aggravates the injury. So if I have Ben Simmons right now, like if you have an IL spot, keep him in there. He was playing well before the injury. The Brooklyn Nets definitely need him back. They haven't been healthy all season between Nick Claxton's injury early on and Spencer Dinwiddie missing a little bit of time and now, you know, Simmons. So they definitely need him back. I would just be cautious about when he returns to play. If he has a couple of games, I'd probably look to sell immediately because that's not something that I want to deal with throughout the season. If this happens to pop up again in a month and a half, you know, you're going to be having to deal with a pretty frustrating situation. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that I was definitely advertising selling him before the injury, but now this is kind of the world you live in with Ben Simmons, man. It's going to be trips to the IL for no disclosed amount of weeks here and there throughout the season.
Yeah, it's a tough one. More positive news. Kelly Oubre sounds as though he's getting closer to a return, which is pretty amazing given the reports that came out when this incident happened initially. It was that he was going to be out for an extended period, multiple weeks. And it's been, it's been 2 weeks, maybe, if that, maybe not even that. So he's doing individual stuff, going to be reevaluated in a week, but I guess there's a chance he's back in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I've seen him dropped in a few leagues. What do you think? Because, I mean, obviously he started the season really well. He was scoring well off the bench and then starting. But they've made some changes since that happened. The trade of James Harden. D'Anthony Melton is playing a lot better now than he was 2 weeks ago. Do you still think Oubre can be someone that puts up 12-team value this sort of season or when he returns, or is it more of a wait and see?
Yeah, so there was a couple of leagues that I did see him on waivers, and if I had the ability to stash him in IL, I definitely took that opportunity. I think he's down to 57% rostered in Yahoo leagues, so he's probably floating out there for many people in a lot of leagues. So I think it's worth the flyer just based off how he was playing before. Not only just the scoring in the threes, but he was actually shooting pretty efficiently, which is something that has been kind of a hindrance to his fantasy value in the past. But then also, you know, he's averaging over a steal per game, at 1.4. So even if D'Anthony Melton continues to play well, I think there's still a role for Oubre to still provide some value for fantasy managers. Now, maybe he won't drop 16 a game, but I think that he'll still be a pretty safe bet to hold 12-team value given how he was playing before. Now, all that said, I would also temper expectations for the fact that this guy just got into a car accident, and I don't even know the significance of the injuries, but the fact that he can recover, you know, in that short amount of time, it probably bodes well for his outlook. But, you know, it still could take some time to get adjusted, get his feet back. Still a very bizarre situation. I know TMZ released the footage of that, but I don't know. We never really got any answers about what happened, and only that he had injuries to, you know, certain parts of his body. But the fact that he's able to return this quickly, that's a great thing for fantasy managers.
It is, yeah. Someone else, and I mean, this is, I really want to mainly talk about this guy because it's relevant to me and a lot of my teams. But Jaden McDaniels is going to, so he sprained his ankle yesterday. They've said he's going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. For me, he was fringe anyway. He was a borderline hold. He hadn't been playing that well despite starting and playing good minutes. But is this Kyle Anderson time? Do we need to go and pick him up? Will he just slide in and start like he did last year when Towns was out? And as we know, last season, he was a must-roster player. He was putting up top 100 value, chips in across the board, can sort of do everything, give you some assists, defensive stuff. Is this what we're doing? Are we making the move to go and get at Kyle Anderson if he's available?
I think so. I think he's the immediate ad. And, the fact that he's going to be missing, that being Jaden McDaniels, 3 weeks, upwards of 3 weeks with an ankle injury, that could be some short-term staying power for Kyle Anderson. Now, the one thing that I've been kind of scouring the net about is I've seen beat writers mention Nickeil Alexander-Walker quite a bit. And so I would probably try to look at my initial thought, and just based off of past performance, is Kyle Anderson. But I do think it's interesting that the people closest to the Timberwolves are talking about, Alexander-Walker needing to step up in McDaniel's absence. So I agree with you. I labeled McDaniel's one of my breakouts, and that hasn't come to fruition yet. And I was trying to hold on to him as much as I could. And I have injuries on other rosters. So, like, if you don't have the roster space to be able to stash him in IL, like, he's a drop. And being that he's out for almost probably a month, like, you can find better options on waivers anyway.
Yeah, I like this, as I mentioned, because I have Anderson on a few teams, and I've held him. He's just been doing enough for me because I'm punting points. So he's been getting me enough. So I'm hoping that this means he gets closer to 30 minutes. But if you look at yesterday's box score, Alexander Walker played 34 minutes, I think. So, and McDaniels went down early. He only played 3 or 4 minutes. So if that's an accurate reflection of what they're going to do, then he might be someone worth grabbing as well. Just to see what the minutes play out like.
Yeah.
So a couple of guys that I sent through, I think just sort of relevant names people are talking about. I'm just going to start with Miles Bridges because he's basically, since I spoke to Zach last week, Bridges came back sort of 2 days later, came off the bench, played really well, started yesterday, play his minutes. I mean, he's well over 30 minutes per game. There was the overtime, which helped that. But I think, off-court stuff, we've discussed that. We don't need to go into that. This is fantasy. I've got him on 2 teams, and I've been pretty happy with what he's been doing. Based on, I think the discussion we were having was, what's his role going to look like? Is it going to be 24 minutes off the bench? Is it going to be 35 minutes starting? Rozier still has to come back, so we're not sure what that's going to look like, whether Brandon Miller drops back to the bench. Have you any clarity here for you on what Bridges' role might look like for the remainder of the season, and where we think that might put him in terms of fantasy value?
Yeah, I think Steve Clifford's still tinkering with the lineups. PJ Washington came off the bench yesterday, and Brandon Miller started, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But I feel like if you have Miles Bridges, you got to feel pretty good about it. I mean, he's coming off a 14-point, 15 rebound effort. He's getting I think he's averaging 4 assists over the first 3 games that he's playing. And he's getting the stocks too. He's getting 1.3 steals. So, like, I think Bridges is doing everything you wanted and a bit more. I was probably lower on him than most, just probably because I was, probably having more bias towards him being a shit bloke than anything. But fantasy production wise, I mean, he's scoring. He had an off night yesterday, but, like, I wouldn't be concerned. Like, I think he's a guy that you can comfortably plug into your lineups. And I don't think he's going to be leaving the starting lineup even when Rozier gets back. I think it's probably going to be one of Brandon Miller or, continuing to be PJ Washington, because if they're all healthy, they actually have a pretty good fantasy roster, right? Like, I think that they could all find minutes, even if they're staggering the lineups with, some of the more notable players like PJ Washington coming off the bench and even Brandon Miller. But I think Bridges is probably the safest of all of the front court players for Charlotte right now, just based off how he's playing and the minutes that he's getting.
Yeah, and I think if you had him two years ago when he had that breakout, if you remember back, efficiency was probably the only issue throughout the season. He does go up and down. He'll go 30% one night and then 55 the next night. So as long as you can deal with that, as you said, he's getting rebounds. He gets some defensive stuff. He hits threes. He's good from the free throw line.
He's a beast at fantasy. He does fantasy well.
He does. Were you surprised? So I watched the first game, his first game back. Were you surprised by the reaction he got? Like he generally got a positive reaction from the crowd. Was that surprising to you?
Not really, just because I feel like they've had such a bad product for so many years that Miles Bridges was actually like a fan. Like, I mean, him and LaMelo Ball are like highlight reel central every time that they play together. So I feel like they were more so excited just to be like, oh my God, we have a good basketball player coming back.
Yeah.
Ignoring everything else. Like, hey, our product is better on the court. So it's good to have him back. And from a basketball perspective, I could see that lens. Had I been in the crowd, I probably would have been sitting down.
Yeah,
I would have go grab a bite to eat or grab a beer or something.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to stay in Charlotte and on the guy you just mentioned when I can get his stats up here is LaMelo Ball.
Yeah.
So I was pretty high on him this season. I was comfortable taking him middle of the first round, so pick 7. We sort of had that top 6, and I was okay taking him even ahead of Steph, which was probably not consensus. I think most people were looking at him towards the back end or early in the second round. And he started the season, it wasn't great. And I was a little bit worried because I'd taken him with a few first round picks. But over the last 2 weeks, he's a first round player. He's averaging, so last 2 weeks, 32.3 points, 6 rebounds, 7.5 assists, 1.5 steals, almost 4.5 3-pointers on 50%. And 88%. So is
back.
Yeah, look, he's back. And I mean, we watched him in Indiana, and he was good. And he was that's where I think he started to turn things around. So since then, he's looked far more aggressive and comfortable on the offensive end. Maybe that's just the fact that he barely played last season because of multiple ankle injuries. So he's getting his confidence back. Where do you see him for the rest of the season? Like, can he maintain first round value, or would you still see him as sort of that top 20, top 25 player?
I think he could certainly hold on to it, and especially because the Hornets just got a piece like Miles Bridges back. Like, I think part of the reason that Ball suffered early on was not only just the ankle injury recovery from that surgery, but also like he just didn't have a lot of weapons. So him having to force the issue offensively isn't what he does best. I think he's best when he's out in transition, he's getting people involved, and then, you know, he's into a rhythm of the game, and then he can start bombing from 3. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, man. Like, I mean, I didn't have the expectation that he would be dropping 30 a game for any portion of the season.
No.
But that being said, he doesn't even need to do that to hold first round value. And right now, the only thing that's holding him back from being a top 5 guy is the turnovers, you know, comparatively to like a Tyrese Halliburton type of thing. So production wise, if we're talking points, rebounds, assists, steals, threes, and free throw percentage, like Ball's outstanding. So I have him. You know, I just do my rest of the season rankings just because when you draft on Yahoo, you can still draft throughout the season. So I try to make it so that's updated so people aren't drafting people like Robert Williams who are out for this season. Yeah. And so I still have LaMelo Ball firmly, you know, I think I have him in number 7 or number 8. But I think there's a very good chance that he could slip up into that, you know, 6 territory by the end of this season if he continues to play this well.
Yeah, I hope he does, because that'll actually be one that I hit on, which would be good. And yeah, I mean, you're right. Coming into the season, like, I didn't view him as a 30-point scorer. He was someone I was targeting in the first round with the idea of possibly punting points. So I liked getting him and Fred VanVleet early, and then grabbing someone like a Chet or Wemby if he was available. So I viewed him as more like a 23-point scorer, 24. Same. So this is really just icing on the cake. Rozier coming back will cut into that, his ability to score, but also could see his assist numbers go up a little bit. So, yeah, I'm really happy with where he's at the moment.
Do you have Rozier anywhere? Are you getting concerned about his groin injury? Because like I mean, it seems to be every year with him with a groin. So yeah. I don't know.
I don't have him. I didn't draft him this year, but I was at that game that he did the groin. and it was a bad one. Like I remember tweeting out, because I tweeted out from the game saying that this looks bad. Like it could be multiple weeks, if not a month or 2 months. And then they sort of came out a few days later and said it's not too bad. He's questionable and could be back soon. And it's just sort of, we really haven't got an update, which isn't unusual for Charlotte.
Right,
they're not great at their injury reporting.
No.
So, look, I mean, if you've got him, you just have to hold him and hope that he is back soon. But I wouldn't be surprised if it does linger, because groins, especially a guy with a history of soft tissue injuries,
right?
They want to take it easy. And I think the fact they've got Miles Bridges back there now probably gives them a bit of leeway. But they do need, I mean, they had a really good win against Boston the other night.
Yeah, they did.
But on the other hand, they've had some really bad losses. So I guess it almost depends on how they view themselves this season. Are they pushing for the playoffs, which I assume they would be. So we'll see. But yeah, look, it's a little concerning, but personally, I don't have him. A guy I do have, though, in a lot of spots is Markelle Fultz. And I mean, speaking of no updates, really, tendonitis is tough because all you can do is rest it. It's not something that has it's a sprained ankle. We know it's 2 weeks or anything like that. This could be a week. It could be a month. Are you concerned about him? Because I'm starting to get a little bit concerned, given he had the injury, then he came back, then he's missed another 5 or 6 games. Is this something that could cost him a significant part of the season?
I think that they're managing the injury well by keeping him out. However, they haven't really provided any context to, all right, it's knee tendonitis and he has swelling. Okay, well, like, what's the rehabilitation process? Is it just rest and then the swelling goes away and then he's ready to return to basketball activities? This day-to-day thing, being ruled out a day in advance type of thing. Like, I'd rather them just say, like, hey, he's going to be out for a month and a half as he continues to rehabilitate from that. But it hasn't been that. It's just been, he's out today, you're not getting him back. So from a fantasy perspective, like, you can't hold on to him if you don't have the space for it. So there's leagues that I play in that don't have IL. I had to drop him, and I know it hurts because I was a believer in Markelle Fultz too. But at this point, without any clear indication of when he's going to be returning, he might as well be a CJ McCollum. He's out indefinitely. And anytime you have an indefinite absence, I'm usually aggressive and just like, hey, let me just cut bait now, find someone else to replace that value. And if he's around and he's getting rumored to be coming back, maybe he's out there for me. But I would be hard pressed that people are going to rush to get Markelle Fultz, given, the lack of information around his injury, other than it's just knee tendonitis and swelling.
Yeah, it is getting tough. I'm still holding him, but I also have Marcus Smart in a lot of those teams. And at least we have a time frame on him.
Sure. So that was the thing. It was like, at least with Marcus Smart, it was like, hey, this guy's going to be out a month. He immediately went to injured. Whereas like Fultz was day to day for a while, and then he came back, and it's just really tough. And like, to your point to that, like, I think I have a few teams that are just really battling injuries, and even though I have 3 IL spots, they're all occupied right now. Yeah. So like, I just got to move on. Yeah.
I feel like there's been a lot of injuries to guards to begin the season. That might just be because I have a lot of teams that are guard heavy. So I'm noticing it a bit more, but
we have similar problems.
But yeah, I think the big men are relatively healthy. Can't really think of any significant big men that have missed time so far, where a lot of guards are missing multiple games. Devin Vassell is another one who I've got, and he's upgraded to questionable, I think you said. So fingers crossed he comes back. But again, it's a soft tissue injury. The Spurs clearly aren't going anywhere this season. They're pretty bad. So this could be something that they manage a little bit, at least for the next month or so. It is hard. I get asked about Fultz all the time, and it's, well, because for me, if you're going to drop someone, I always think, if I saw this guy on the waiver wire, would I straight away grab him? Like, would I hesitate? And I'm probably still at the point where if Fultz was available, if someone dropped him in a league that I didn't have him in, I would grab him quickly. And so that's always like the FOMO kind of thing. I worry that I drop him 2 days later, he's back and someone else has got him. But and you sort of preach patience to begin the season. Don't panic. But we're into week 5. So when is that point in the season where it's too late to wait, kind of thing? You need, if someone's injured, you just need to move on to get active bodies on the floor. And we're probably closing in on that period, especially given a lot of fantasy, head-to-head leagues anyway, finish earlier each year. Like, we're starting to bring it forward just because of that last period of the season where it's all over the place. You can't have your fantasy playoffs in the last 2 weeks of the season because you don't know who's playing. So a lot of leagues now only go for 18 weeks, 19 weeks before the playoffs. So we're almost a third of the way through the season. So if you're struggling, which I am in a couple of those leagues, I may have to make that tough decision. But then you go and look at the waiver wire and go, well, there's just no one here that I want.
Right. Do I want to pick them up for Grayson Allen right now just to get through the week? But yeah, I think the other element to the exercising patience is where did you get him in the draft? So I feel like it gave me less heartburn dropping Markelle Fultz than who's been a panic drop. I feel like everyone that's been the most talked about, should I drop him or not, or been those Trey Jones, Tyus Jones, those 9th, 10th round guys. So I'm not tripping if you get to the third of the season, you're like, all right, this isn't working out, I'm out. It's the guys that are like Josh Giddey, where I'm like, all right, I paid 6th round value for you, and you're not doing what I expected. Am I going to drop you? No, but what's your trade value now? How low do I need to sell you to kind of get something back? So.
Yeah, on Grayson Allen, this has been discussed a bit and it's not brand new news, but Bradley Beal's still going to be out for another 2.5 weeks now, 2 weeks. Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon have both been really good. You agree they're must-roster players at the moment, despite, they've got limited upside, but both are playing big minutes. And if you had to choose, would you have a preference out of those two?
Yeah, I was pro Eric Gordon early in the season. Now I'm more Grayson Allen, and it's more so because I think Grayson Allen, for his skill set for fantasy, I think at this stage in their careers, it's a little bit different. I think Grayson Allen gets matched up better in terms of defense, so he can get more steals. The threes, he's a better 3-point shooter than Eric Gordon is. The assists is kind of hit or miss for both guys, but I would lean to Grayson Allen to get more rebounds. Are they must rosters? No. If I was in a 12-team league, I would probably get one of them. But shallow leagues, I don't think you need to have either one, because I think it's really going to be the Kevin Durant and Devin Booker show in terms of that usage to make up for Bradley Beal. But being that they're going to be out for 3 weeks, if you have a favorable schedule, and the Phoenix Suns, this isn't one of those weeks, I don't believe. But if there's opportunities to stream them, I would certainly take it, just because that they're going to get the minutes.
And thoughts on Santi Aldama? So with Smart going down, we had Gilliard, who started a couple of games, and he was all right, but he wasn't great. But Aldama has been the guy that stepped up. They're playing him at the small forward spot, which they didn't do last season. And he obviously went off in his last game. I think he had 27 shot attempts, which for Santi Aldama, that just sounds stupid.
That sounds extremely desperate.
For the next 3 weeks, whatever, till Smart's back, do you think Aldama is someone that needs to be rostered?
Yeah, he's a must roster, and it's also because they're going through other front court issues of Xavier Tillman's now out multiple weeks, and so now it's so the fact that they have to move to Aldama to the small forward spot. I feel like Taylor Jenkins has no choice but to just plug him in wherever he can fit. And I think that's great for his fantasy value. Right now, he's being super aggressive. Memphis is down scores. And if he's willing to take 27 shots, I think they welcome it, because someone needs to help out Desmond Bane here. Jaren Jackson Jr. hasn't been great. And it's probably because he's having to do more defensively to try to anchor that front court, just because there's no one else there to help him. So at this point, I was on Jacob Gilliard earlier on, but now that he's kind of slid into a bench role, we've seen his minutes kind of decrease over the last couple of games. I'd be all in on Santi Aldama, because I think that he's going to be a guy that you can roster comfortably for the next couple of weeks, given the way that he's playing right now. And I think the one surprising thing was like he's being very aggressive on the rebounds, which is not something he really did. He was usually just like 15 points, 4 or 5 rebounds and a few threes. Whereas like now he's getting double doubles and he's also blocking shots and he's getting assists. So he's pretty much in category leagues. I think that he's probably one of the bigger priority ads next to like Keontae George and Skylar Mays, over the last week.
Yeah. So a guy that I was relatively high on him, didn't get him anywhere, but Alpren Shengun has been really good to start the season. Houston's best player. Van Fleet's been pretty good as well, but I would say based on expectations, Shengun has been their best player. What do you think? Like rest of the season, looking at the rest of the season, is what he's doing sustainable?
I think so. So I went to the game last night, them versus the Rockets versus the Warriors, and getting to see him live. And, he came into the game questionable and he gave one of his best performances of the season, arguably the best performance of the season. He absolutely annihilated the Warriors in the interior. He had 7 offensive rebounds, had another double-double, dropped 30 points. Like watching him live, man, he's just so skilled. And like, it's like that combination of like a Jokic and Domantas Sabonis that, I think he is their best player. Like if we're talking, in totality, I think Fred VanVleet, I think the one thing that's actually working really well for Shengun is that VanVleet has developed this chemistry with him so that he's getting him a lot of easy shots at the rim. And Shengun also like stretched the floor a considerable amount. Like he took like 4 or 5 3-point attempts. So like the fact that he's just expanding his offensive game as this season matures, like he's going to be even better. So I think he's been doing everything and more for fantasy managers. And Fred VanVleet's been struggling from the field, but like I think it's pretty cool that he's upped his assist rate. He's up to like 3rd or 4th in the league in assists per game now. So I think if you want to bet on someone rest of the season, it's definitely Alperen Shengun because he's getting a ton of usage. He's passing the ball. He's playing defense. He's getting rebounds. Like he literally does everything for fantasy. So I'm loving some Shengun right now.
Yeah, and I'm just pulled up his numbers here, and he's 46th on the season in 9-cat leagues, but free throws are dragging him down. So he's 60. Yeah. He's at 60 or barely 60% from the free throw line. To this point in his career, he's been 71, 72. Right. So there's scope. I mean, if he can get that back up to 70, and there's no reason he can't because it's not like he's one of these like Mitchell Robinson or Jakob Poeltl, these guys that have no range. As you said, he's taking threes. He has the ability to hit mid-range. So to me, he should be closer to a 75% free throw shooter than a 60%. So if he can get that back up to 70, then he's probably inside the top 30. And I think the worry, I guess, coming into the season, well, playing time was one. We weren't sure how they were going to utilize him, but I think we can safely say that he is their center of the future. They're invested in him now. The worry or the concern was to do with his assist numbers. We saw last season when Jalen Green was out and when, Kevin Porter was there. When Kevin Porter was out, he had some assists, like triple doubles. He was doing 7-8 assists regularly. And we thought, well, now with Fred VanVleet, is that going to scale back? But Fred VanVleet is handing out a lot of assists, but Shengun is at 5.7 per game, up from 3.9 last season. So he's been able to maintain that element, and that's where we get the comparisons with Jokic and Sabonis is with his ability to pass. This is really thinking long-term and looking career-wise, but I don't think he gets to Jokic's level because Jokic is a freak, and so it's hard to ever do that. But could he get to Sabonis level where he's top 20, top 15? I think he's probably got a little bit more offensive upside than Sabonis. I think he can score a little bit better or from more spots on the floor. But do you think he has that upside to get there?
I do. And I think it's also like the thing about Doma is that he hadn't had that much competition in Sacramento in terms of like people behind him to like spell his minutes. And I think that's also working for Shengun because like Jock Landale I want to say he played like maybe 15 minutes yesterday.
Yeah.
He looked terrible. Just plodding around there. Like, it's like, all right, get Shengun back on the floor. Like this offense is going terribly without him on there. And so like, if they had the choice to try to sign Brook Lopez this offseason. They passed because I think they knew what they had as long as he committed on the defensive end. And sure, he's going to have some defensive mistakes, but I think Shengun is showing like you can play through him with confidence. And the one thing I would say, like, yeah, he's averaging 5.7 dimes. It could probably be even better than that because right now Jalen Green and Van Vliet are both struggling from the field.
Yeah.
Once they actually start knocking down some of those catch and shoot threes because Shengun is drawing so much attention, he could even see his assists go up. I do have more confidence in that free throw percentage going up than the assists going up dramatically. But either way, I think that there's pretty strong indications that this guy could be a top 30 player now. And if we're looking ahead to a couple years from now, he could be that early second round pick like Domantas Sabonis is, because there's not that much difference. Like, he's already made the leap in scoring. And to your point, he has a more of an offensive skill set. Like, he has the jump hook. He's got fadeaways. He's just more crafty. Right. So I think that there's a lot of upside here with Shengun, and I wish I had more shares myself as well.
And I think, like, defensively, obviously last season there were a lot of highlights about him making bad reads, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And while his numbers haven't, pardon?
He's young. Like, he's still learning the game, right?
He is very young, and he's come from Europe as well. So the games are very different, Europe and the NBA. Yeah. So if you look at his defensive numbers this season, he's actually down. So he ended last season with 1.8 combined steals and blocks. He's at 1.4 this season. But I think, I don't know, I'm pretty confident in saying that he looks better as a defender this season. And last season, part of the issue, I think, for him was that the Rockets were terrible and had no one defending the perimeter. So he was having to make those calls. Whereas now they've got Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason's getting healthy. Jabari Smith is a year older and getting better. So I think having those better defensive players around him means that he doesn't have to make those calls on defense. And it does mean that his numbers are down slightly, but he's not going to be dragged off the court. I mean, they had a bad coach last year as well, right, which didn't help. But yeah, no, look, I'm really high on him. If you had to make a call now, we're a long way off, but looking to next season, where do you think he would go in drafts? Would he go in the second round?
I think he'd actually be right around that Porzingis area, so maybe Evan Mobley, like around that third, fourth round ish. Probably like third round, I think, is fair. Like the way that he's playing. I could see the argument for maybe a late second, but I feel like mid to early third, I think is probably a good spot for him going into next season. Yep.
Yeah, going to be interesting. Just looking through if there's any other names, any other news or names that you can think of that's sort of fresh, that's coming out recently. Yeah.
Little concern. Nah, I don't know about little concern, but Jalen Williams popped up on the injury report. He's missed his last 2 games with a strained hip. Not much has come out other than that he has a strained hip. So I don't know if this is, is this something that we need to be bracing for a week or 2 off to kind of heal here? Or is this something like, hey, guy's been playing a lot of minutes, he's been playing well, let's give him a couple of days off? There hasn't really been much information about it.
No, it's I mean, he didn't play their last game or their last couple. They were comfortable wins, so that, I mean, they didn't play him against the Spurs or whatever it was, because they're at that point now where they're good enough that they can rest or manage guys through those easy games. And it looks, I mean, we're still early, but it looks as though they could be pushing for top 4 in the West. I mean, there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, but they look good. They've got some good bench pieces as well. They're in a position that if they're third or second in the West and they just feel like they need one piece, they've got things they can trade. They've got like 400 picks in the next 5 years or something. So they are in a position that if they wanted to trade for someone, they could. So I think that, I mean, if that's what they've got in mind, maybe they're cautious here with Williams. But I mean, there's nothing's come out to say that it's serious. So hopefully it's just a precautionary kind of thing. Just one last guy I want to talk about, and again, this is just a guy that I was high on and I managed to get him in a lot of leagues, is Jalen Johnson for the Hawks. he's been amazing as well. Another guy that has exceeded my expectations. He's top 40 almost for the season. He's the 44th ranked player, an efficient scorer. He's getting defensive stuff. It took them one game this season to realize that he should be starting. So it didn't take them long. Looking ahead, rest of season, can he maintain top 50 value? Is that viable?
I don't see why not. I think Quinn Snyder's system is very fantasy friendly. The Hawks coming into this week, they had 6 players ranked in the top 100. So in my opinion, if he continues to start, for what he does from a fantasy perspective, him being efficient, scoring, rebounding, also being able to grab and go and push it in transition and get those assists. I mean, I think we're looking at, this is what we were expecting John Collins to be doing the last couple of years. And he's kind of just taking this downward, trajectory. He's back now with Utah, but I love Jalen Johnson, and he was a breakout for me as well. I think we were both drinking the same Kool-Aid when, you kind of saw those flashes in the preseason, saying like, this guy has it. And like, this team is just way more dynamic when he's on the floor. And so, I don't think Saddiq Bey is going to push him for that starting role anymore. And I'd be curious to see if we can actually be even better if, the Hawks decide to, the Hawks aren't very good right now. What are they? They're pushing around 500. They're not that great. Maybe there's a place for DeAndre Hunter getting traded and Clint Capella getting traded. What does that do for this youth movement if we can get, I mean, he's already playing a lot of minutes, but I don't know. I would say like if there's a couple other pieces out of that starting lineup, maybe he gets even more usage into that. So I don't know. I'm just really high on Jalen Johnson. I think what we're getting, I think top 50 based on his efficiency, he could definitely hold that rest of the season.
Yeah, I think we were sort of high on him, and then we saw the preseason and they didn't really use him like we thought they would. He was coming off the bench. And so I think...
But he was so good in those spurts off the bench. It was this guy has to play, right?
Yeah, he was. But I think because of that, obviously that's when a lot of people are drafting in that preseason time. Mm-hmm. Once the analysts sort of start going, oh, hang on, maybe he's not going to play the role we thought, I think he tumbled a bit in drafts and was available really late, like 12th round, 13th round, where I think probably 2 weeks earlier he was going in the 10th round. So anyone that got him, I think you have to be thrilled with what he's doing. Now I'm just going to bring up, if this works, it does. Let's look at your industry pickup is a league that we're both in, and both our teams are not going well. There's a lot of red next to your guys there with some injuries. I just thought I think we're going to be trying to do a weekly show covering this league so that people can follow along. And for anyone that doesn't know, just quickly, this was a league that was put up pretty late with a whole heap of analysts. Fantasy Basketball International did this with Josh Lloyd, and Alex Reclean was involved as well. And basically, we want to turn this into the go-to, I suppose, for listeners and readers who want to follow along with an elite league. And we've got a website, industrypickup.com, where you can have a look at all the moves and the standings, and there's write-ups. And as I said, I think Mitch, Casey, and I are going to be doing a weekly show talking about our teams in the league. Just having a look at your team here, I guess any overarching comments on what your strategy was this season and how it's playing out and how injuries might have affected you so far?
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, you had the 12th pick and I had the 10th pick. So I played it too conservative in retrospect, being how aggressive you went. Like, I think you took a Wemby Chet on the turn, and I was like, no, like I really wanted to do it. One of the two people, and you took them both. So, having to draft Kevin Durant first overall, I wasn't thrilled about it. Like, I was like, all right, cool, high floor, but like not crazy upside. And I didn't know Bradley Beal was going to be out this long, so it's actually worked out pretty well. The problem is that, I've had to deal with injuries to primarily Jalen Duren, and I didn't really have much depth behind him in terms of rebounding and blocks. So once he went down, I had a really good first couple of weeks, and then once he went down, my team kind of went with him. Also, I don't have any point guards now. Like, I've been trying to find them on waivers, and there's just nothing out there. I know you've been on the market for a guard too, and I'm like, I want to make a trade, but like everyone's just hoarding all these guards. And I had Tyler Hero in my point guard spot, which was great. Again, 2 weeks into the season, and then he went down. So I think I'm just hemorrhaging right now. And once I get my guys healthy, I think I'll be okay. I think I got a couple late round steals that I think have worked out pretty well. And RJ Barrett, I'm probably going to try to sell him, but no one wants him. So I'll probably just have to eat that one, but I'll take the efficiency while I have it. Evan Mobley is a guy that I expected to take, that next leap. Hasn't really done it yet. But I feel like that's still a person that could come on as the season wears on. And I see Jaden McDaniels on that team. He's probably going to be a drop very soon, as we've talked about him ad nauseum today. And then OG Anunoby was another guy that I thought, could actually boost my steals, but he hasn't been great. He didn't take any offensive leap with Fred VanVleet being gone. It's really just been Scotty Barnes. So, yeah, all in all, I just think that this team, I just need to rename it the mid team because they're just middle of the pack, middle of the road, nothing exciting. I'll probably finish. I'm going to need some waiver wire help here. That's why I picked up and stashed Kelly Oubre. I need him to come back and actually be effective because otherwise this team is not a playoff team. And I'm in a lot of leagues, so like I'm not totally butthurt by it, but like I care about this league. And for me to be, sitting in the bottom right now is definitely eating at me a little bit.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is like it's a very close league. So it's I think Josh is sort of out front at the moment. But there's sort of from sort of high sort of 3-4, I think, down through to the bottom. It's pretty close. Like a lot of teams are sitting around 50% for the season. Look, Anunoby is someone I've got on one of my big teams in a money league, and he's been pretty disappointing for me. He hasn't done. He's had moments, but
he's been injured. Like he's doing this day-to-day thing, and it's like, can't get consistent performance.
And it's annoying when, like, if it's an ankle that you do in a game, it's okay, it's basketball, but he cut his finger and we don't even know how he did it. Which the fact that they won't say how he did it probably means
says a lot,
doing
right?
something stupid. Yeah. So that's been annoying. I think your team highlights, and it's something that I've seen with a couple of my teams, is like Tyler Hero. He would have been your 5th round pick, something like that, 4th, 5th, maybe 6th, But losing someone like him, I'm sure, has had a huge impact on like points, threes, assists to some degree, not as much. But it's very similar in a couple of my leagues where I lost Anthony Simons. So he was a guy that I got in the 7th, 8th round, something like that. But losing him has had such a huge impact because you lose 100 points a week, and that's a lot. Like that it all adds up. So. Anthony Edwards on your team, he's been pretty good, but hasn't really.
He's not going to carry you to the playoffs right now the way that he's playing.
No.
And then like I think that I was expecting a little bit of a jump in assists and some more stocks, and I think the stocks from last year hasn't really returned yet. So yeah, this is a team that I'm not super excited about. Like I'm going to have to make moves, and I hope that people are keen on wanting to trade. I don't think anyone's executed a trade yet in this league yet, but
no,
I'm probably going to be, I don't know, maybe I would say maybe we can make a deal, but like you're searching for the same thing that I am.
Yeah, I am. We both want the same thing. So here's my team. Not as much injury, not as many injuries. That's bad English. Not as many injuries, but the two that I've got are just ruining me because Fultz and Smart are just my assist and steals guys. And again, they're not first-round players or second-round players, but each of them can get 5 to 6 assists per game, which is 40 to 50 assists a week.
Right.
And you're not finding that on the waivers. I just picked up Jaden Ivey, and that's more of a throw of a dart. And look, let's hope that he starts to play well. But Josh Giddey, someone you talked about, he's averaging like 5 assists or 4.8 or something. I thought he'd be closer to 7. So yeah, that's my downfall. My bigs are awesome. I mean, I can't complain at all about Wemby, Nurkic, Anthony Davis, Chet Holmgren. They've all been incredible. So I'm dominating
your
in blocks.
Front court is disgusting. Absolutely
it is
disgusting.
Field goal percentage has been a bit of an issue, which I was expecting, and I was then hoping that getting efficient guard like Drew Holiday, would help, and Fultz, but he hasn't been playing, and Holiday's been sort of, he's been a bit meh. So yeah, a little bit like you. Like I've got some guys that are playing really well, and others that haven't lived up to what I wanted. So we'll see. I mean, I am sitting sort of mid. I think I'm about, I don't know, 8th or something. I do have Jalen Johnson in this team, which is nice. But when I'm hoping or relying on Kyle Lowry and
Jaden
Ivey to get me assists, I'm not sitting pretty. So I am trying to trade for a guard, and I do have lots of bigs that I can offer. Although it's a tough decision. Like I go, yeah, okay, I want a guard. Who do I trade? Do I trade Anthony Davis or Chet Holmgren or Victor Wembanyama? Because it's hard to know. Davis could get injured. The Spurs could tank. I think Chet is probably the safest of those three in terms of rest of season health and that sort of thing, but he's very unproven. So I am sort of going over in my head, who do I trade here? And it's a tough decision, but no one even wants to trade at the moment, so it doesn't matter.
Man, your team, I mean, you have such great problems to have. Like I think marketing's probably like my biggest asset. Where I'm looking at your team, I'm like, hey, who needs a big man? I got you. You need blocks, I have you. You need rebounds, cool. And you have a Sar Thompson who you haven't even talked about yet. Like the defensive, like the stocks on your team are insane.
No, I'm good in those categories, and that's why I thought people would look at my roster and go, "Hey, he has got a lot of bigs that could help us, and let's offer a guard." But hasn't come. B-Dub has said he would like to maybe do a trade, so I've got to look at his roster, and I am possibly going to inquire about Shengun, but I'm waiting for him to have a bad game because he'll get me 6 assists a game without me giving up rebounds, and so.
That's interesting. Maybe you move, Anthony Davis for Doma or something like that, or move Shengun for Wembanyama. Well, actually,
maybe that's what I'm thinking.
That's actually a pretty good floor raiser for you. I think Shengun will play more games. Yeah, you lose out on the blocks, but what you lose in blocks, you'll gain in probably a little bit better of efficiency outside of free throw percentage. But you have pretty good free throw shooters on your team, so I don't think you should have to worry about that too much.
I do, and I've got pretty good shot blockers as well. So Kyle Anderson will get you a block a game. Sar Thompson will get you a block. Nurkic will get you a block. And then I've got Anthony Davis and Chet Holmgren who can get 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. So, I'm going to work on that today and see what he says. So, look, we're bang on time. I'm going to let you go to your whatever you've got coming up. Let people know where they can find you. I mean, we're in full season mode now, so it's all pretty consistent. But you're obviously with Yahoo and doing the show with Roto World. But where can people find you, and what have you got coming up?
Yeah, hit me up on Twitter at Dan Titus, and tune in to the Roto World basketball show every Wednesday. Got a show coming up tomorrow, and Kingy was a guest last week, so if you haven't checked out that episode, do check it out. He's got some really interesting stories about mushrooms and his tour around the U.S. But otherwise, it was a great show. So definitely check that out. And thanks for having me on, Kingy. And we'll do it again sometime, I'm sure.
We will. And we were both on the show with Maddie and Josh on the weekend doing the thing. That was fun. That was a bit different as well. So go and check that over at the Insight Fantasy Sports, I think is their YouTube page. That will do it for today's show. Remember, you can check out all of our content over at fbibasketball.com. Check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe. That would be amazing. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.